Today, we're going to be talking about the most hated coral, Aiptasia. When to remove it, how to remove it, and what not to do when you're in the process of removing Aiptasia. Now, the first point I want to make, I don't think Aiptasia needs as much hate as it gets. Obviously, it's not healthy if you're trying to keep a tank full of corals because your corals are going to suffer because they're going to get stung. That being said, having Aiptasia in your tank, it's really not the end of the world. I would even go so far as to say Aiptasia is in almost every reef tank, and if you keep a reef tank at some point in your reef keeping career, you will encounter Aiptasia along with almost every other pest on the list of horrible things to happen to your tank. It's the nature of the game, and it's also why the game's so fun. A lot of my experiences in reef keeping has been to do with smaller tanks like pico tanks and micro tanks. So when an Aiptasia pops up in a small tank like that, it looks massive and it does a lot of damage. On top of that, what makes it even worse is to kill an Aiptasia in a large tank, you're not going to damage too much of the surroundings. But if you try and kill an Aiptasia in a small tank and you make a mistake, you slip when you're using your coral treatment, you're going to hit your own corals and that can wreak havoc. So I went through this period of just accepting Aiptasia was going to live in my tank. That being said, I got this one gigantic Aiptasia. I thought to myself, because it's such a large Aiptasia, I don't want to chemically remove this thing. I want to manually remove it. That started this cascade of me manually removing a bunch of Aiptasia in my tank, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The reason Aiptasia can wreak havoc and just keep coming back and back and back is because they release planula. And planula, I think I'm saying that right, maybe it's planulae, I don't know. Think of planula like a coral seed. And when your Aiptasia gets stressed, when it freaks out or when it retracts, it'll actually spurt out a bunch of these Aiptasia seeds, which will start populating your entire tank. It seeds your tank and then they start growing little tiny Aiptasia, which obviously will then turn into massive Aiptasia. So when you're manually removing Aiptasia, you want to make absolutely sure you're doing it outside of your tank. So what I like to do with my micro tanks is I'll leave most of my corals on frag plugs, mainly because I like to let them self-populate or self-grow by letting them sort of lean up against a piece of rock. And then the coral will grow around that rock. And then I can remove the frag plug and have two separate sets of coral, and it's been naturally done. I don't even have to think about it. So when Aiptasia turns up on a frag plug, you just pop that thing out, turn the frag plug over, scrape it out. And here's the key. If you put that back in your tank straight away without washing it, you're going to get that planula release, which will cause issues. So to circumvent that, make sure you dry it off and try and remove as much physical evidence of the Aiptasia being there as possible, and then wash it out in a little bit of salt water. Simple as that. Return that bad boy to your tank. Yeah, he might look a little bit sad because you've just roughed him up, but he'll return to normal in a day, and even better than normal because it's not going to get stung by that Aiptasia. Now your other options, you can buy nudibranch that actually feed on Aiptasia. You can buy livestock like shrimp that will feed on Aiptasia as well. Those two options I haven't trialed yet, but I will. Now the last option is chemical treatment. You've got a whole list of options. There's so many products that will, remove Aiptasia from your tank by squirting onto the actual Aiptasia mouth, the oral disc itself, which is awesome, and it works if you've got a larger tank. Smaller tanks, like your pico tanks, if you're not careful, you may actually accidentally damage surrounding corals, because in pico tanks, you just cram those bad boys with corals. Another awesome way to do it is to douse them in kalkwasser paste, which one of my friends showed me.
Did you say kalkwasser?
It works an absolute treat, but you sort of have to be like a sharp shooter as well. I will always opt for manual removal over any other treatment first, if it's possible. Obviously, if you've got it on a large piece of rock, which is impossible to remove from your reef tank, you can't manually remove it without leaving it in the tank and scraping it. In that scenario, you're probably going to release lots of those planulae. The way I see it, Aiptasia, though it's a pest coral, it's still the ultimate coral. It's almost bulletproof. You can't kill that thing. It will keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. And if you actually remove the idea in your head that it's like horrible, terrifying, really damaging, you can start to sort of appreciate the beauty of Aiptasia in a way. One time I actually saw a coral reef tank that was purely just pests. So this shop had removed all of the Aiptasia, things that appear in a reef tank that are unwanted, and put them in their own little tank, and it looked beautiful. Awesome concept, turning a negative into a positive, plus you can sort of appreciate the beauty of the thing. That's how to manually remove corals from your tank. Hope this video helped, guys. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.